hands behind y'all back.
It is 10 a.m. in New York City, and we've got a ruling based on the Associated Press saying this a moment ago. The judge has delayed a ruling on whether or not to dismiss President-elect Donald Trump's criminal conviction. These are 34 counts that came in at the end of May 30th. And the former president's been fighting it ever since. And the judge is going to sentence him prior to the election, then delayed it given the election itself. And so this is the ruling here. Just reading from the AP. A New York State judge has paused proceedings in the already decided criminal case on charges stemming from the hush money paid to a porn star. All right. The document reads, the judge had been set to decide by today whether or not the conviction could be vacated due to the ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court midsummer back in July on presidential immunity. Trump had also been scheduled to be sentenced on November 26th. So this now is a whole new ball of wax.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, we back on the sham, the scam, the witch hunt. Bananas all out in the middle of the street. Kangaroos jumping at the mailbox. Kangaroos at the stoplight. At the intersection. Kangaroos. Just can't make this up, y'all. Well, we got an update, man. Comment down below what y'all think of this. I can already see the comments now from them beautiful patriots, man. My brothers and sisters, man. They say no delay. It needs to be completely dismissed. As a political election interference tactic, I believe this judge should be disbarred. Scam trial, scam judge, scam prosecutor, jail them all, disbar the criminals. And y'all know what I say? And y'all know I say it loud and proud. Hands behind your back. And it's a whole bunch of them. It's a list of them. You know? And that's what we've covered, man. And this is one of the reasons why we did such a deep dive into Trump this year, man. Seeing everything they did, man, to this man. You know, sham after sham after sham. They tried everything in the book, man. And what a comeback. What a comeback. A landslide. But these people are just corrupt, man. This corrupt system, they're just lousy. You know, and him, I tell you, him and his daughter, if I really want to say what I really want to say, they'll take this whole video down, y'all. They'll just take the whole video down. But we got a delay. And they're talking about all kind of things until 2029. Let's jump into it, y'all.
It's a ridiculous case. There's a lot of reasons why it should be thrown out on appeal. Immunity is important to us for immediate purposes only because it's the only issue that's instantly appealable. But there's a bunch of reasons why this case should be thrown out. And I would hope that there'd be a good chance once President Trump is out of office as a twice elected American president, that at the age of 83, the New York authorities would decide that, you know, this case was already, whatever it was worth to them, they've gotten whatever value there was out of it. It was really only brought in the first place to try to prevent him from being elected.
Yeah, and guess what? Guess what happened now? And again, we want to just clap it up and thank them. Clap it up. They might as well just, y'all did this. Y'all made him more popular. Y'all showed y'all true colors to millions, billions of people. Y'all showed the people are like, what is America? Y'all actually made it easier for him. Y'all are one of the big reasons why it was a landslide. You showed how corrupt you guys really are. Democrats. I mean, unbelievable. Gave him a mug shot. Like, we want to just thank all y'all, man. Lied under oath. They going on trips. Just wasted everybody's time, energy, tax. Just burn the money up. Just burn it up. She didn't hire her boyfriend. I mean, just ridiculous, man. All these people. Letitia James. Crying Jack Smith. They about ought to be ashamed of themselves, man.
And since it didn't succeed, I think it should
Alvin
land
Bragg
on the dustbin of history, but that's just my view of it.
Andy, this is just, okay, I have good, dumb questions. So does he have to continue to use private lawyers for this?
And did Michael leave the country? Did he leave the country? I hope he left the country. Because then he said he was already planning this. And I think he went live on there and said, I really do think Trump is going to win this. And I'm already planning to leave. I hope he left the country.
Or can the White House counsel's office take over?
Well, it's not necessarily either or, Dana, because he's got personal interests and there could also be public interests. So his personal interest is obviously his criminal liability. The public interest is whether having the proceedings interferes with his ability to carry out his constitutional duties as president. So since there's two sets of interests, there's no problem with having two sets of lawyers who work in their lanes on how this all plays out.
So, Andy, what I'm hearing you say, give me a course correction if necessary, is that in the year 2029, when this case is brought back or continued, let's say, he will stand a very good chance at the appellate level to have this case appealed and potentially thrown out. Is that what you're saying?
That's right, Bill. And, you would pick up, I presume, again, I haven't read it yet, but I presume you would pick up right where we are now. And where we are now is we have a pending immunity issue. And as we saw in the Washington federal case, immunity, because it has to be fully litigated before you do anything else in a criminal case, or at least that's the way it's supposed to happen, it could take a long time just to sort that out before you get to all the other issues in the case.
Well, I'm just, it's kind of letting it all sink in. You think that, I don't know Judge Merchan. I don't really know New York sort of internal politics here, but Letitia James, she was full steam ahead, and you made a point in the 9 a.m. hour that she does have political ambitions. I don't think this judge does, but does a ruling like this keep him in the good graces of the judicial teams around New York, sort of his social circles?
I've thought, Dana, from the beginning that he's the kind of guy who, even when it's obvious he's made a misstep, he has a hard time admitting it. Like, it was clear, for example, when he let Stormy Daniels testify that was a catastrophe that he shouldn't have allowed to happen. And instead of saying that was a mistake on my part, he blamed everybody else in the room for allowing it to happen. So he's not a guy who easily admits that he was wrong. It seems to me that this ruling allows him to continue that record. Basically, he doesn't have to deal with Trump's claims of error. He doesn't have to deal with the immunity issue. He's the one who let the potentially immunized evidence into the case. Everybody on the planet knew that the Supreme Court was looking at this issue, and there was a chance that they were going to rule in President Trump's favor. So they were playing with fire by allowing this evidence into the case. He's the guy who let it in. So it seems to me that by freezing things in place and not having to thereby grapple with Trump's claims of error or the immunity question, he gets to basically not admit error, and everybody gets to carry on.
You just wonder down the road, Andy, what does the world look like? What's the country look like? Merchan is 62 years old. He could retire before this case is finalized.
Yeah, but it's such a silly case. The whole thing is just preposterous, and
it's ridiculous, man. We shouldn't even But again, everything we've seen, man, you know, everything happened for a reason, I believe, y'all. You know, no matter how silly this is, no matter how much of a sham, how much of a scam it is, how much of a witch hunt it is, it all played in for a big reason. And that's why we got that result November 5th. That's why, man.
You know, the fact that they brought it 7 or 8 years after most of the facts in the case happened, and it was brought by a district attorney who ordinarily pleads felonies down.
Besides how terrible the border and the economy and everything is, and how terrible the Democrats have been, and how terrible these last 4 years has been, but we gotta let that all has to be in count as well. Don't mix up my words. I know some of y'all be mixing up how y'all mix up words and this and that, you know, but y'all get what I'm saying though, man.
And to misdemeanors, here he took it nothing and it blew it into 34 felonies. The whole thing was so unabashedly political. I think you have to hope that 4 years from now, with a long look at it, people will, instead of saying we got to get that case back on track, they'll say, how did we ever let that happen in the first place?
You know, you think, Dana, about this election and the results that we just saw, and heck, I mean, cases like this may have contributed to the drubbing.
I said on election night, it wasn't necessarily in spite of the lawfare that he won. It might have been also because of it. And National Review's senior writer, Noah Rothman, is on set with us now. And you've done a lot of thinking about the election results a week ago today. And wonder what you think about that in terms of the Democrats thinking that the legal cases were going to sink Trump, and they didn't.
Well, they thought that the legal cases were going to sink Trump as an adjunct of his personality, of perhaps his biggest liability for most voters, who exit polling suggests don't find him especially, some don't find him likable. They voted for him anyway. He's less popular than his Democratic opponent, who he beat. And there's an element of, for those voters, the majority makers in that coalition, who are saying to themselves, well, gosh, you know, the alternative to this is just less palatable than a Donald Trump presidency for all his faults and flaws. I would like to ask Andy, to the extent that he can speculate, what extent, or what Donald Trump is going to do about these outstanding indictments against him at the federal level. Is he going to simply withdraw the Jack Smith's office, to withdraw the special prosecutor and live under indictment, or move forward and pardon himself? Because if the latter course is what he moves forward with, that could reignite a lot of the opposition to him as a person, personally.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know one way or the other, but it's the ball's in his court.
I get the sense that what's going to happen is the Biden-Harris administration is going to dismiss the Trump cases. They've already sort of laid the groundwork for that. Judge Chutkan has set, I think, December 2nd as a date for Jack Smith to get back to her on how he sees the case proceeding in the future. I think what he'll come back with is a motion to dismiss the case. My sense of this is that, and I continue to think this even though the White House pushes back the other way, I think that President Biden is going to pardon his son, and that he will get a lot of criticism if that's done in a vacuum, because it's a form of self-dealing, and he also said he wouldn't do it, so he'll look terrible. But I think if it's pitched to the country as kind of a clemency package, where we're turning the page from the Trump prosecutions and turning the page from the Hunter prosecution, the country will take it a lot better. So I think it's going to be the Biden-Harris administration that gets rid of the Trump prosecutions, rather than having Trump have to do it himself by getting his Justice Department to try to dismiss it.
Do you think they would cut that deal, Andy?
I do. Yep. I don't see who's the loser in it, though.
I do too.
Just one more thing on the politics of this. What Judge Merchan allowed Trump to do in the middle of this election was to give him a platform a couple times a day. You know, the cameras are parked outside the courtroom looking down the hallway, and Trump took advantage of it every time he walked in and walked out. And every cable outlet covered it. All that stuff was distributed on social media. You know, you can crack on Biden for running a lackluster campaign at the time, but, you know, Trump took the stage and took advantage of that moment. Jonathan, does this case come back when he leaves the White House in 2029?
Well, it can. It's a sort of a curious position to put the president in. Some might even view it as passive aggressive, because you leave this dangling sort of Damocles over his head. And so his critics will say he's awaiting sentencing. And you make it more difficult to appeal some of these issues. Keep in mind that the sentencing issue aside, and I doubt that the judge would have sentenced him to jail time, this case has layers, in my view, of reversible error. I think that the judge did a horrible job in this trial. He ruled regularly and consistently against Trump, and in some cases, I think that he did commit reversible errors.
He ought to be investigated, all of them, disbarred. I mean, just. And go pick the daughter up too. Go pick the daughter up too now.
So freezing this in amber is not going to be necessarily good news for the Trump campaign. I think they were eager to appeal this, to get a final decision and to at least appeal aspects of this. So there's going to be some maneuvering going on as to what can be still reviewed. In terms of leaving a case suspended for 4 years, it's just a very odd way of addressing this. You know, the sentencing only created a conflict with the president.
He won. He won. Y'all failed.
Duties if the judge sends limitations upon the president. I mean, he could have simply said, I'm not going to impose jail time or home confinement. He could even say that being president is equivalent to community service. So there's a lot of ways that he could have handled this. So I think as we play this out a bit, we're going to have to see what the Trump lawyers do. I don't know if they will necessarily welcome the idea that they're just going to keep this thing sort of as a zombie case for 4 years.
Professor, stand by, and we're going to get to this whole issue that Andy raised about this political quid pro quo, which would be the ultimate, right?
That's right.
The ultimate pinch me moment here. So stand by for that. We got more.
Carrier Bond, you were in the courtroom for all of this that happened in New York City. Tell us what you think about the decision to delay.
I think the Trump lawyers had to expect this to some extent because, you know, they did file just a few days ago saying that because Donald Trump is now president-elect, it raises all kinds of new constitutional questions that the court has to consider as far as both, you know, on one hand, the immunity issue from the Supreme Court, but also sentencing, given that he obviously, if he were to be sentenced to anything, wouldn't be able to execute that sentence because he will be at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. But a couple thoughts come to mind. One, I've been wondering what Governor Hochul is thinking. You know, she has the power to pardon him in this. And it could be an interesting decision on her end. I've wondered if Donald Trump is having, and his people are having conversations with her right now, because as we know, the state of New York, it's a bit of a mess as far as how they run law enforcement there. So I've wondered about that. But, you know, look, in the big picture here, the thing that has always tremendously bothered me about this case is that I think a huge point of this was for the Democrats to get the talking point convicted felon. And the reason and the way they were able to make him a convicted felon was to say that he committed this, you know, these misdemeanors. He was covering up some underlying crime.
Y'all made people say, "Whoa! I can't wait to go vote for the convicted felon." Woo! The convicted felon one. I see people walking around with Trump mugshot T-shirts, and we even got Trump mugshot T-shirts. Yeah, man, that convicted felon is the biggest, most successful talking point yet. Thanks to the corruption. Thanks to you, y'all. We want to clap it up for y'all, man. We appreciate you. Y'all did such a good job, man. Yeah. Call him what you want. Convicted felon, call him a thug, call him a rapist, call him a dictator, Hitler. Call us garbage, you know, for supporting them. Call us this and that. Y'all did such a great job. Woo! The convicted felon won.
Crime. And the real travesty in all of this is that we and he still don't know what those underlying crimes are because we weren't told. So Donald Trump became the so-called convicted felon, and we still don't even know why or how exactly.
Right, Carrie, you were in the courtroom.
I'm sure
You came on the air.
this.
You came on the air repeatedly. You were taken back by the absurdity of the case itself, and
Right.
obviously your opinion has not changed.
No, it hasn't changed at all. I still think it's a disgrace, and I wonder what this means as far as the delay and what will play out in the coming weeks, especially with the politicking, so to speak, between Donald Trump and maybe the leadership of the state of New York.
Okay.